This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.
So I'm not my name, not my body, not my thoughts, not my feelings. Who am I? I am the awareness that experiences these things, and what we know about awareness is it's consciousness. And what we know about consciousness is energy. So if the known universe and us are energetic, how do we understand how the universe works, how consciousness works, how our experience of this reality works?
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. Get ready to hear moments that will help you to see the world differently and inspire you to become the happiest, healthiest, and kindest version of you. Hi all, welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. We have a very special episode today with astrologer Luke Balcke, who I actually met at David the Medium's live show on the Gold Coast about a month ago now. He absolutely captivated me as he introduced the show and talked us through the meaning of astrology in such relatable terms. So I had to have him on. He has a very active community on Instagram that people seem to love, and he's been involved in this work for over a decade. He's well versed in astrological interpretation from a traditional Western perspective. Now, he and I have a great chat today. We talk about so many things in terms of what astrology actually is, how an awakening can change your perception of life. We talk about global predictions going into the next 12 months of what we are expected to see and experience on a global level as a collective around the world, what our birth chart means and how we can link that to our purpose, and so much more. He is a deep thinker, he's a deep talker, and he loves to explore the awakening consciousness of the collective, which he puts in such understandable terms. I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. I know you're going to love it. Now, as you may know, we are holding a live event for Things You Can't Unhear with David the Medium, who is one of our most popular guests on the podcast to date. It is on the 15th of August on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. And at that event, you will be part of an eye-opening, mind-expanding, spirit-lifting discussion with David. Hear his 2024 and 2025 global predictions, have an opportunity to ask him questions yourself from the audience, and of course experience a meet and greet with David himself, plus have some special surprises that we can't yet tell you about on the night. So if you'd like to come along, I have a special code for you to enter at checkout for your special price. Just enter TYCU. That stands for Things You Can't Unhear, to get your special price. If you're not living on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland but still want to come, why not make a weekend of it? We'd love to see you. There's some great accommodation options up here too, and the weather is divine at this time of year. For now, I will let you sit back and enjoy this conversation with Luke Balcke. Welcome, Luke Balcke, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm very excited that you're here. We nearly didn't have you here. We had this scheduled for 3 weeks ago, and unfortunately you had a pretty serious accident. So I'm so glad you're here and that you're in recovery mode. How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling good. Day by day, every day is a little better than the one before. So yeah, very lucky, but lots of deep reflection. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pretty good. Beat up in my body, but I'm all right. I'm in good spirits. So
For everyone listening, Luke had an e-bike accident that I think you had you break 9 or 8 ribs.
I broke 8 ribs and my collarbone and my acromion, which is the top of the shoulder. Yeah, lacerated a liver, depressed my lungs, and ruptured one of my diaphragms, or the diaphragm on my right side.
Wow. All right. So I have a disclaimer. So what happened before? I got your message in the morning to say, I can't do the podcast interview today because I'm in hospital. And the day before, a friend of mine, and who is now a podcast client, she said to me, Do you ever promote your podcast episodes before you've recorded them? And I'm like, never. I never do because something always happens.
Wow. There
It
you
turned out that I promoted our podcast episode before we recorded, and lo and behold, something happened. And I'm so sorry. I don't think I had anything to do with it, but
go. You know,
that did actually happen.
I've been looking for that little tiny missing piece as to what was the trigger for this event. Now I've found it. I'm like, you put
Oh,
the buzz on
goodness.
me. Good one.
So when I got your message, I was absolutely like shell shocked. I'm thinking to myself,
What?
I am never promoting the podcast episode before they are recorded and in the bank ever again for the safety of our guests, if anything. So, Luke,
Okay.
I'm absolutely thrilled that you're okay. I know it's been a difficult few weeks, but we're here and recovery is on its way for you. And hopefully, I had nothing to do with it.
No, just coincidental. That's all.
We don't believe in coincidences, though, do we?
No. Uh,
Now, I first heard of you at the David the Medium event in the Gold Coast about a month or so ago now, and it was pretty fascinating watching you on stage and address the crowd. I know a little bit about astrology, but the way that you described astrology was pretty fascinating. And I think I came up to you afterwards and I said, Luke, that was the best explanation of astrology I've ever heard because you made it so easy to understand and relatable. So I'm going to get you to jump into that description because I think it was powerful to see that, this is what it means and this is what it can interpret into our lives. So just give me a very, like you did on the day, I suppose, just a brief overview of what astrology actually is.
Yeah, so basically the universe we live in is energetic. Everything is energy and it's in a state of vibration. High vibrational energy, really high, like beyond the vibration of light, is source energy, is non-physical, can't be perceived through our physical senses, all the way down to energy that is physical and becomes structure, like material objects. So physics tells us that even a physical object is just energy in a state of vibration. Low vibration, the lower the vibration, the more physical it becomes. High vibration, the less dense it becomes. So, if the universe is energy and everything's energy and we're energy, we have a physical body, but we're not really our body. We have a body. So, the identity of my body is, oh, I'm Luke. But even the name Luke was the name given to me. It's not one I chose. So, I have a name, but am I my name? No. Am I my body? No. I think and I have thoughts and I can communicate. So am I my thoughts? And it's like, well, I'm not my thoughts either. And I feel, because when bones break, you feel it.
Mm.
Um, but I have feelings and I'm not really my feelings. I just have feelings. So I'm not my name, not my body, not my thoughts, not my feelings. Who am I? I am the awareness that experiences these things. And what we know about awareness is it's consciousness. And what we know about consciousness is energy. So, if the known universe and us are energetic, how do we understand how the universe works, how consciousness works, how our experience of this reality works? Well, it just so happens that astrology is the symbolic language of the universe, of the energetics of the universe. So, there is a correlation between the motion and movements of the planets through the stars, through the constellations, and energy. And in our past, whether it was handed to us from some sort of extraterrestrial being, or whether it was just something that we as a humanity learnt through observation, we've been able to correlate experiences of reality to movements of positions of planets in the sky. So every single planet has a function that it represents within consciousness or the energetic universe. And when we can correlate the movement and position of certain planetary energies in certain parts of the sky to our experience, then we're starting to understand, well, what is the nature of the universe and how does this work? And what is the energetic patterns underlying our experience? Where we look to the stars above to tell us that. And the astrology is the cosmic language. The challenge that we have is that cosmic language is symbolic. So it's a language of symbolism. And when we're educated in now, very especially in Western culture, and mostly throughout the world, we're educated in our left brain, analytical, rational, reasoning brain. So we deal with mathematics and language and those types of things. Our right brain, our feminine, intuitive, sort of subconscious part of our brain, deals in symbols, but we're not educated in how to interpret symbols and how to understand symbols. So therefore, for the vast majority of people, when we think about astrology, it's a language of symbolism. We just don't understand it. And for very good reason. We can go and tangent into my perspective on why that would be the case. But the thing is, if we want to understand who we really are and how we really are and where we really are and what we really are and what we're actually doing here, we have astrology as the sort of blueprint that sort of underpins that understanding. So when we connect to that universal cosmic symbolic language and then connect it to ourself and our own journey, we start to reveal true knowledge of self. And it reveals so much. It's so rich. It can help us understand our journey in this life, past life, future life, the evolutionary intent for our soul, as well as help us understand and navigate our mundane human experience of life, which is wealth and health and well-being and finance and relationships and social aspect of life. So everything can be interpreted through the symbolic language of astrology. And when I discovered this through my own personal journey of awakening, I'm a Virgo. So Virgo's nature is to like to understand how things work and why they do. So I'm very like, yeah, but why, how, I want to know that information. And when I understood and started to understand and learn astrology, that was something that I just went, that makes sense to me. I get it. I understand. And the other thing that happens too when you start to learn the symbolic language of astrology is you start to see the world through that lens. So when I see things happening around the world, I see the symbolism of it. An example of that, bird flu. Okay, it's like, where bird flu all of a sudden come from? Why is bird flu the thing that they're all like, Well, the planet Jupiter that deals in expansion and things that grow has moved into the sign of the bird, which is Gemini. And back when Elon Musk bought Twitter, the bird, little blue bird, he bought that when Mars was retrograde in Gemini because he knows a thing or two. So he took over and transitioned Twitter into X during a Mars retrograde in Gemini. So it's like Gemini's the bird. We have Jupiter, the planet of expansion, moving into the sign of the bird. Well, we have bird flu. Part of the programming now is we've got to be afraid of bird flu. So that's just one example of how you can correlate experience that we're going through to the symbolic language of astrology. It's like, what? Is there something deeper going on here? Do people know this? Or is it just coincidence?
Coincidence. It's interesting.
Humans by chance.
Yeah, there's so many ways in which I can and go with this. But firstly, birth charts I think are super interesting. And I want to touch on this because there's significant moments in our life that can be seen, I suppose, through this astrology. With your accident, let's just relate it to your accident that you just experienced. That would be seen as a pretty significant event for you. Is there something that was shown in your chart that you maybe didn't pick up or did pick up or were wary of?
Not only was it shown, it was repeated over and over and over again. The theme and the symbol of what I was going through was repeated and repeated. So in astrology, when we look at birth chart interpretation, we don't just look at one thing meaning one thing. We look at lots of things meaning similar things. So we call that weighting. So when there's a weight of the same type of sort of experience, then we can sort of likely to go, okay, there's more likely the case that this is going to manifest for you. So about 6 months ago was probably the last time I looked at my personal birth chart. And normally I'm looking at it regularly because I'm an astrologer. So that's what I do. I see what's going on in the universe and I look at my birth chart. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, navigating. And about 6 months ago, I looked in and went, wow, this is a pretty heavy time of major life transformations for me. But, I'd been going through so much personally and professionally that I sort of associated to that and I hadn't looked too much deeper. And then the 6 month period leading up to the accident, my life just got overwhelming. Professionally, personally, I had a lot of challenges going on outside of the work that I do. My work was extremely busy. I had a lot of things that I was doing with work as well. Personally, we were renovating a home. So I don't know if anyone's ever done a renovation. I'm handy because I have a brother and a father that are builders. So I've grown up around the building industry. But when you're renovating a home, everything you do for the first time, you've got to go and learn how to do it. So outside of work, my mind was so busy trying to understand, and like 75 trips a week to Bunnings and back, because you're like, oh, I need that. Oh, I didn't get that. Oh, that wasn't the right bit. So I was just overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed. And what happened then was my own personal self-care got put to the side. And that's my nature. And that's one of the sort of challenges I'm working through, is I tend to put other people's needs ahead of myself a lot, especially people close to me, especially when they need help. I like Virgos love to be of use and service, and I want to help, but I stopped helping myself. So leading up to the accident, what led to the accident and the actual trigger point was me just like needing an outlet, needing just to like a decompression. And then, some choices that led to probably a situation that I probably, if in retrospect, went, maybe I'll stay home tonight, have a warm bath instead of going for a ride and having a few beers.
Mm.
In my chart, just as a basic, the planet Mars is always associated with accidents. Whenever there's an accident, you're going to look to see a signature of Mars. Mars in my chart in 3 different locations, because when I look at a birth chart, I'm not just looking at the birth chart, I'm looking at all these different other charts that are associated to the birth chart. I won't get into that with your viewers because it's a little bit complex, but there's not just a birth chart, there's a progress chart, there's a solar arc chart, there's a transit chart. You've got to interlay all these things. So Mars in all those charts was activating different parts that all related to sudden and unexpected accidents, damage to my physical body. Like on the particular day of the accident, it was like, if I had have had the awareness, if I had have been really more focused on myself and doing what I normally do, I probably would have picked that up and went, it's probably a nice time for a warm bath and some meditation rather than going for a ride and having a couple of beers. So
Yeah.
lessons the hard way.
So interesting. So interesting. So for us listening, having our birth chart there and having that astrology chart and that map to use it in bigger ways to funnel the knowledge to find our purpose, I suppose. How can we use that? Because a lot of us live our lives, and you are probably an example of this as well. You get to a certain age and you realize everything you've been doing up until this point is really not aligned to the person that you want to be, or that you don't feel aligned to, or you don't feel on a purpose path. How do we use astrology to find that purpose of who we really are and who we're supposed to be in this lifetime?
It's a really good question. And that's exactly what happened to me. I become someone and build a life for myself, only to realize it's not who I am. It's not who I wanted to be. Because that sort of started to me question, like, what's going on in my life? Why am I unhappy? Why am I not fulfilled? Why I should be, because I've got all the things I thought you're supposed to have. So that was a big catalyst leading to my personal evolution and awakening journey. So astrology, when we think about purpose, there's lots of different ways to frame that, to think about that in context to our life experience. Because purpose could be, what am I here to do? Or what is your innate skill set? What is your passion? What are you good at? We could use the astrology charts to help discover those and then align you to that. And then you could be doing something in this world and it could be purpose aligned. I like to sort of step back a little bit more. I'm an evolutionary astrologer. So there's lots of different types of astrologers, traditional astrologers, and so forth. So evolutionary astrology, we have our foundational belief that underpins our practice in that we're a soul having a human experience. And the eternal, real part of us isn't the Luke and the body. That's just the vehicle for my soul to be here to do what it came to do, which is to evolve and to grow and to return on its journey home to source, which would be a state, if embodied in the physical world, of enlightenment. And I feel like we all collectively have that same mission. It's just that the vast majority of us are unconscious of it. Then on a individual level, okay, so if we're all collectively going home, to enlightenment, individually, what's my path in this life that's going to help me move in that direction? So I use astrology to sort of first look at that point of view of the person that I'm reading for. And then I give them that perspective integrated into their life. So then it helps them to reframe a difficult life situation, a challenging relationship, a loss of career direction, put it back into like, yeah, but what's the soul coming here to learn? Because if we can align our human life, the Luke, the physical body, to our soul's like intent for evolution, we go into flow, we start to move into purpose. So that was something that through my own personal journey that I did. So up until my awakening, I was a pest controller, and I did that for 20 years. I was very successful. I think I was runner-up for Pest Controller of the Year in 2009. Um, but it was a service-orientated industry, and I really liked I like helping people, genuinely helping people. So that was a way in which I could do that. But the industry I was in and the way I was doing it and the impacts on health because of the nature of the work was probably, if I'd continued to do that, it would have been a short life because would have been, too detrimental to my well-being. So when I awoken, and then I started to sort of expose myself not only to astrology, but spirituality, to the journey of the soul, to like the matrix system, to the physical sort of unconscious aspect, to more of awakened. I was like, well, that's what I want to do. I want to stand in the gap between the, conditioned version of us versus the awakened version of us. And I want to hold that space to say to people, you're not crazy.
Mm.
Yep. Keep going. This is the path. This is the way. So what I do is I take that soul sort of evolutionary intent that I can look through the chart and really discover that on many different levels. And then I integrate that into their awareness around their life. And that helps people overcome the difficulties, their setbacks, their challenges, bring awareness to why things are happening the way they're happening, and also shows them what they need to change in the way in which to go about it. So astrology is a tool, and it's not the only tool. It's a map. So think about like you're starting off on a journey and you're going to where a destination, and it's a long journey. It's going to take a long time, and you've never been on that journey before, so you don't really know the way, but you have a map. How often on that path are you going to refer to the map? How often are you going to look at that map, come back to it, and just go, oh yeah, yeah. How often on journeys do we get lost and wander off the path, and then we're in the wilderness thinking, and I feel like if you look at the world, probably 60 to 70% of people have wandered off their path, and they're walking around in wilderness lost, and most of them don't even know they're lost. So, you get the map and you reconnect. So I feel like for everyone, my ideal sort of people I work with are the people that have realized they're lost, but then going, well, I don't, what's going on? I thought this was life. I thought this was everything. I thought everything I'd been conditioned to believe is real. And now I'm realizing it's not. Who am I and what am I doing? It's like, here, let me reconnect you to your map. And it's a unique map. It's not my map, it's your map. And it's not to say that you live every day looking at the map, you're in the grocery store looking at the map, should I buy the chocolate? No, it's not like that. It's more about just go, okay, fundamentally, that's my mission, that's my purpose, that's who I really am, that's who I became here to be. And now how much more work do I need to do to align to that? When we do, life flows, opportunities come, right time, right place, right people just happen to be in our life. And you can experience this through flow states,
Mm.
through heightened intuition, through the right type of connections and opportunities that come into your life. So you
Mm.
really know when you start to align like that, you're like, wow, I'm on purpose.
I was talking about the flow state in a couple of episodes previous to this one, actually, because I love that feeling is just being in flow and knowing that things are just working out in your favor.
Mm,
But if people don't end up becoming conscious of their path and their map, so to
mhm,
speak,
mhm.
will they eventually get guided onto that track, or can people complete this lifetime without ever going into the right pathway that was meant for them or that they had chosen?
Yes, and they have been for a long time, completing
Mm.
their lives completely oblivious, living in the wilderness, lost and not realizing that, and then life ends. So a lot of people, that's their life. That's what will happen. With the awareness that comes through the awakening process, that's very unique and personal for each individual soul. So if you take someone that's lost and you can see they're lost and you try to show them they're lost and they're not ready to be found, it's detrimental to them, and it's not good for them. They're better off to stay lost. They're better off just to walk around in the wilderness and just, okay, cool. So yeah, people can definitely walk through lifetimes. In fact, there's a really good book written about astrology. And even if you're not into astrology, it's a really good book to read in relation to the evolutionary journey of the soul. And it's called Pluto, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul, It's by Wolf Green. I can't remember his first name. I always get it wrong. But you can look it up, Pluto, the Evolutionary Journey of the Soul. In that, he sort of says that there are 4 states of people in their evolutionary state, and once they incarnate. The first state, which is about 1 to maybe 2 to 3% of people, are in a really devolved state of evolution. They're either brand new souls or they've devolved through negative karmic experience. If in reality we wanted to know who are those people, we are looking at the severely impaired or disabled or deranged or mentally, damaged people. So very simplistic type people. So very 1 to 2%, maybe sometimes a little bit more, a little bit less. Then you have what he says is about 70 to 75, give or take, depending on where we are as a humanity, of people in a conditioned state of awareness. So they believe everything they're told, they go along with the narrative, they don't question things, and they just think that the life that they're living is real, and that's all there is. That's the vast majority of people. Then you have 10 to 15, sometimes more or less, percent of people, which are like ourselves, which are going, hang on, there's something going on in this world, and that's not, I know I'm more than just who I was conditioned to be. So we're on that evolutionary awakening journey. So we start to break away from the mainstream. We break away from that. We question authority. We start to live our own life and walk our own path. And then on the other end of that, you have the 1 to 2, maybe give or take a few, of people that are in a heightened evolutionary state. And we would call them the sages, the mystics, the guides, the gurus. They're on their evolutionary path to enlightenment and possibly maybe close to obtaining it. And they can walk among us and you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't know. Some of them become teachers, guides, and gurus, but others are you wouldn't know they even existed. You could come across them and you might feel their presence of being really like, whoa, this person is way more knowledgeable, and you just have this, understanding energetically of like, wow, they get it on a different level. But they're at one end of the scale. So bring that back to your question. Most people are just walking around thinking that life's real and everything they've been told is real, and they don't have any reason to question it. And that's how they'll most likely live out their lifetime.
Do you think that number's growing? Do you think that 15-20% is growing?
Yes. So this is my personal individual perspective, not necessarily anything that I've learned, but just how I see the world. What I think is happening is that the 70% of people living in that conditioned state, because of the massive people and population that we have on Earth at the moment, the vast majority of people living in that state, living in a conditioned way, and the conditioning is dysfunctional. It's definitely, once you awaken, you realize the conditioning is definitely dysfunctional. In some ways, it almost retards their evolution. It keeps them conditioned, keeps them trapped in that fear sort of loop. I feel this is what's happening, is that they're trying to either awaken them or at least collectively move them to another level of awareness, because living in that disconnected, unaware state is damaging not only themselves and one another, but also this earth. And I'm not a proponent of climate change or any of that sort of programming, but I do think that we could live here on Earth a lot better and take care of the natural resources and the nature and the wildlife a lot better than we are. And because of the collective mass that are here asleep and conditioned, I think it's more like we're being given a little nudge now, little children, time to sort of wake up. So not only is that 10 to 15% of awakening people growing, but that pool of 70% collectively is slowly being urged to, come on now, we have to do this. Otherwise, I don't think the Earth, I care for the nature and the wildlife and the impact that we're having on it. But long term, I have zero fear of the Earth and its condition. I think that the Earth will always be the Earth. It'll always create life. Humanity, though, as a collective, the Earth will wake up one day, sneeze, and we'll be gone. And it's happened 6 times already, or 5 times already, right? So I think we're at that point now of going, hey, come on now, let's wake up, let's reconnect, let's really fundamentally, discover and rediscover who we are and what we're doing here. Let's reconnect to ourselves, to source, to the earth and one another, and let's start learning how to live here differently.
taking a quick minute to interrupt this conversation to let you know about something exciting I am growing. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others. And I've launched a podcast network with purpose. It's called the Guide Your Light Network, that features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of our network that truly embody that mission, and we're looking for more. If this has sparked interest in you and you are ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd love for you to check it out. Also, if you have something important to say and you don't know where to start to bring that to life, we can also help you to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light online sessions to help you get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own that is authentically you. Just head over to guideyourlightnetwork.com.
Yeah.
It loops back to what you're sort of saying in the beginning. It's that collective vibration, that collective energy that's really important to the evolution of the planet we're living in. But let's talk about, because we use the word awakening quite a bit, and that can just mean being more conscious. And I think you described it in something else I listened to really well, is a shift in your perception. Awakening is a shift in your perception of the world. When that happens to us, everything sort of crumbles for a while, because you just start to question everything, and you're like, hang on a moment, what? Wait, what? And I think it was Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley. I mean, he just made it really relatable. He called everything we'd learnt rules, which were bullshit rules. and if you just look at it in that way, but it is that awakening of consciousness of going, hang on a minute, I don't have to believe everything that I've been told up until this day. And it's sometimes not a fun way to live at the start.
Yep.
It's really uncomfortable.
Yep. We've been living in the age of Pisces now for about 2,000 years, give or take. And there's a little bit of uncertainty around exactly when the transition of ages is occurring. Has it occurred? Is it occurring? Will it occur? There's a lot of debate in the astrological community. There's no real consensus. So my point of view is that we're probably in the orb of influence of a transition of the ages out of Pisces and into Aquarius. In Pisces, our reality is created by our belief structure. So they that control the belief of the masses controls this reality. So that's their game. Control what we believe, and we believe it into reality. And that's it. So when you awaken, what is the first step? Question your beliefs. You have to question what you believe, what you've been conditioned, programmed, or educated to believe about yourself in this world. And what happens is, because you start to question it, you start to then want to, like, you question that you discover new information, new points of view, new awareness. So awakening is an awakening of consciousness. You're coming from a conditioned state of consciousness to an aware state of consciousness, more self-aware. And as you do, you start to really question every sort of belief system. Along my journey, it was like the earth's flat. What? What? No. But that's a major belief structure. To question that was a massive awakening for me. So another way to symbolize this is to think of a high-rise building. Everyone, and I say everyone, 70–80% of people live on the ground floor. And on the ground floor, they can see across the street, the hot dog stand down the road. They can see everything that's there and that's real, but they have zero perspective of anything else because they can only see what they can see. As you awaken, you start to elevate up into that building, and the next thing you're up at level 5. So not only can you see everything the ground floor can see, but now you see so much more. So as you awaken, your awareness expands, your perspective shifts. Your perspective of yourself in this world and the way it works changes. Where a lot of people have difficulty is they come back down to that first floor and they shout out awareness from the 5th floor to the people living on the ground floor. And what the ground floor people do is go, crazy, conspiracy theory, you're crazy. And the reason for that is they just don't have the ability to have the awareness to sort of even entertain the idea of anything other than the reality that they're conditioned to believe. So you've got to qualify where you're at. And there'll always be a people above you, and those people will always encourage your take you up, and the people below you will always try to pull you down. So you've got to find out when you're talking to people, where are they at? And you can't talk to people on the ground floor with the fifth floor level of awareness, because they'll defend themselves, they'll outcast you, they'll call you crazy. The reality is it's just they just don't have the capacity or the awareness to understand. So yeah, it's just a shift in awareness. And there are different stages of awakening. I'm still on my awakening journey. I think the ultimate destination is enlightenment. We're enlightened beings. So along that way, we're going to just, oh, what? I found new shift in, awareness, new information. Now I'm on the 10th floor. Wow, I can see so much more than I could on the 5th floor, and just keep going up and up and up. It's important through that journey,
So
though,
interesting.
to
Yeah.
also stay grounded.
Exactly. And that's what I was about to say. It's so interesting, and what a perfect analogy. But, I've met people along on every floor of that building. And I think when you meet people on the 7th, 8th, ninth, 10th floor, sometimes they forget that they might be living in a human experience. And this is a reality of where we are. This is the earth we're living in. And these are the experience we want to have as humans. And I love the way you explain that, because it sort of is that happy middle ground around that floor to go, okay, I can see sort of both sides of this, and I can still live my life. Or maybe I'm just saying this because I'm sitting on that level and that's where it sits comfortably for me.
Yeah, I tell people in that idea is that you have to learn to live in the world but not be of it. So you don't have to identify with it. And it's a lot of identity sort of politics at the moment, right? We've got to identify with this or that, or you've got to be this way or that way, or Republican or Democrat or whatever, all the types of different ways you identify. And the awakened person lives in that world, but doesn't identify with any of that, because it knows it's all just a game. It's just a conditioned, what did you call it before? Rules? Just rules,
Rules.
bullshit rules that you have to live by. Whereas I walk in that world and I'm like, I don't live by the same rules. I can still go about life. I can still go and do my groceries. I can still, catch up socially with people and do all those things. But I'm not identifying with in any way, shape, or form. So you got to learn to stay. That keeps you grounded. Like, it keeps you here and keeps you real and present. But you also don't associate necessarily with that level of conditioning.
What's the biggest or easiest way to step away from the conditioning, or to even just to start on your path? Because if someone's listening now and they're like, I don't want to be on the ground floor, and maybe I do want to shift my perception a little bit, but I don't know how. The answer for me is switching off mainstream media and news, because I honestly can't watch it anymore. I get really triggered by it. I was at my mum's over the weekend and it was on and I was feeling jittery, and she said, don't get upset. It's just news. And I was like, I can't, it triggers me. The narrative triggers me because I
Yeah.
see it differently now and I hear it differently now. What would be something for you, like as a first step for people to take?
Yeah, ultimately that would be integral part of the first step. So you can't go and push out and look at things and start to explore and entertain different concepts and challenge your belief structure if you're still consuming the programming. So absolutely integral part is to just start putting space between you and the programming. And the programming is coming through television, media, government, movies. Like, it's a
I
lot.
call them programs for no reason. Hey.
That's right. We don't channel when we turn on the TV. What are we channeling? Yeah, that'll be the first step. As far as then exploring shifts in awareness, find some really good philosophical books. As a, like, let's say, base starting, things like The Alchemist, The Celestine Prophecy, they're really good sort of places to begin to sort of start to, are they fact or fiction? I think they're a bit of a combination of both. Then for the more like endurance type people, you might want to explore different modalities that can help shift awareness and consciousness. So breathing exercises are helpful, meditation exercises are helpful. Going a step further than that, you might want to explore psychedelics as a way to shift your ego mind. So it's not for everyone, but certainly it's been a part of my journey to explore psychedelics. So magic mushrooms and plant medicines and all that type of thing that can be really useful. And fasting, So really looking after your physical body and doing fasting can be a way to start to really shift your consciousness because of the heaviness that is, dense within our body because of the things that we consume. And we're not only consuming food, we're consuming all sorts of energetic experiences. So when we fast, our body detoxifies from a lot of that physically and energetically. So that can also really shift awareness. I know if anyone's ever done any long-term fasting, you usually get to the end of it and you just got so much clarity and insight, so much deeper intuition as well. So they can be little personal ways which all of a sudden you've taken all the toxic programming away, you've done some like physical fasting, and the next thing you come to the end of that and you're starting to like go, whoa, things are really, I get clients like that are going through those stages all the time. They come to me and like, I don't know what's happening. Like I'm just this is going on, this is going on. And I sit there smiling, going, good, this is great. It's going to be dependent on each particular person and what they're comfortable with. You don't want to go too much too soon because you can overwhelm yourself. And you can, could create sort of psychotic episodes. And I'll give advice from my own personal experience. If you do go a little bit and you start to discover a few things that the vast majority of people are conditioned not to see, be careful and mindful of who you sort of talk to. Me personally, I'm very family orientated. I have a close family, and we have a really good relationship. We're really like friends. We can talk and discuss about anything. So I thought that I could come to them with all of my new shifts and awareness and perspective and astrology and the flat earth and all this stuff. And even my family, because of their level of conditioning at that time, were like, you lost the plot. There's something wrong with you. You need help. So it was like lesson learned the hard way. Okay. Just be very mindful of who you're sharing your awakening journey with, because if they're not ready to start to awaken themselves, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. And then you're going to be like, what? So it can be a little daunting and it can be a little isolating. However, Pluto in Aquarius at the moment. So we really got to find community to help that awakening process. So like-minded people. What you tend to find as well is you'll meet people you've never met in your life that you have such a strong connection with and you relate so easily to, better than you've known people all of your life when you go on your awakening journey. And it's just like, wow. And you can meet them and you can experience like a day or two or an half an hour conversation and never see them ever again. And you can be so enriched than you ever have been in comparison to people you've known since childhood. And it's just like, yeah, we've got to come to terms with where we're all brothers and sisters. And sometimes you meet those souls that are very similar. They vibrate at a similar frequency.
That happens to me all the time. I must say that. Like everything you're describing, that's so interesting. What's happening at the moment on the planets? It seems like a bit of a crazy time. Again, it feels like a bit of a 2020 energy going on. What are your predictions, or what are you seeing astrologically, globally, as to what is going on now and what is coming?
Yeah. Conflict is coming, severe conflict. And the reason for that is because there's a battle between awakening and staying conditioned. And those are going to coalesce into conflict. And we're seeing that politically, geopolitically play out in lots of different areas. Almost to a degree necessary to push us to the next sort of stage of evolution and development. I don't think the vast majority of people are in harm's way, but I feel like those that are extremely polarized are more in harm's way. So an example is if you've become extremely polarized into one point of view, you're more likely to be swept up into either cheering for or fighting against. And the path is the middle between the two sides of polarity. It's to just stay centered. And those that can remain centered, be in the world but not of it, when the conflict, escalates, it's just like, you know what? I'm not in danger. Stay simple, keep life simple, stay where you are grounded, and don't engage in this or what or
You're right, you're wrong mentality.
Totally. So Pluto into Aquarius at the moment, and for the next 20 years, it's going to dip back in Capricorn later this year for a little moment or two. So that's going to be really interesting watching between September and November in context to especially COVID, and especially the last 3 to 4 years. A lot of probably will find, whoa, I mean, we may even find like like law suits and jail and all sorts of things happening for a lot of the people that were behind a lot of that programming, that negative programming that we sort of had to endure. But what Pluto does is it tends to bring polarity, extreme polarizations for those extremes to come out into our world to then sort of create this sort of ricochet point of creating unity. So what that means is as we go through this next level of awakening, you're going to find more and more and more and more tension on the two extremes. And the path is to sort of stay centered while those extremes play out. Those people that are so polarized and conditioned polarized, the path forward for them isn't necessarily very good, very rosy. It's like it's going to play out, let it play out, pull back. And that's them playing their game. That's their path. For whatever reason, they're going to learn through those experiences and whatever comes their way. But for the vast majority of us, as we awaken, we've got to depolarize ourselves from those. And that's going to be so much. You look at the world politically and how they're polarizing us. People against the climate and the nature and the political division. We have ideological and religious division. It's everywhere, even with gender and the division that's happening in just gender itself, which is crazy. It's like, and the people on either side of that are real extremes. It's like, you know what? I don't have to partake or identify in any of that sort of stuff. So stay centered. More locally, Jupiter, planet of expansion, I mentioned before, moved into the sign of Gemini. And Gemini is about information. Jupiter, it makes things bigger. There's so much information coming to light now. There's so much information coming to light on so many different levels. And COVID is an example of all the stuff that's really coming to light now and coming to light through the official channels, not just fringe conspiracy point of view, but actually coming to light through official channels, which is really going to sort of impact people that have been really hell-bent on thinking that was that was real and it should happen that way, and now finding out that it was like orchestrated and programmed and it was done intently that way. So that's going to be really challenging for a lot of people. We've got July and August, some really big alignments. In July, there is Uranus and Mars coming together. They do so every 2 or so years, but they're doing so on a fixed star called Algol, and Algol is called the evil star. So I would like to see around that middle of July some sort of really potent, unexpected flashpoint. Will it be political? Will it be through conflict? Will it be a combination of these things? I think, one to watch too is Donald Trump and his birth chart in particular. It's been really heavily impacted by that alignment. So it'll be interesting to see what exactly is going on in his journey. August, there's another alignment between Jupiter and Mars coming together. Anytime we have Mars activating one of the bigger planets, think of Mars as like there's already tension. Mars is the match that flicks on it. It's like, and it, so whatever underlying tension there, Mars tends to activate that, and it does so volatility. So through conflict or a spark or a flashpoint. Uranus, unexpected change. Jupiter, like big shit happening. In Gemini, information. So that's happening in the short term. We move towards the end of this year and Mars is going to turn retrograde. So Mars retrogrades every 2.5 years. No big deal. It's less common out of the retrograde cycles, but it's cyclical in its nature. Except this time, Mars is going to be opposite Pluto in the sky. So if we go back to October last year, around the eclipses that we had in October, Mars was squaring Pluto, and that was in that particular alignment was the flashpoint of the Middle East flare up. So when the Hamas-Israel conflict went to the next level, that was a Mars square Pluto. Now we're going to have Mars coming into opposition, and oppositions, think of like any fight is always an opposition. There's him and me. It's like, right, we're going to go at it head to head. Mars is the planet of war. Pluto is the planet of crisis. They're going to be in opposition. Now, Mars's retrograde cycle, which means it's going to appear from our perspective to go backwards through the zodiac, even though it doesn't go backwards and it doesn't stop. It's just perception. But perception equals reality. So the effect of Mars is going to be in this retrograding phase. Whilst it's doing that, to give you an idea, Mars spends about 8 weeks through one zodiac sign. So it moves quite quickly. It's going to spend 6 months in one part of the sky. just moving back and forth before it goes forward. And by April next year, Mars will have passed its point of retrograde. And in that time, because of Pluto sort of almost staying still on the other side of the sky, Mars is going to be in opposition to Pluto for like 6 months, from about November, December, January, February. That's going to be the peak point, and then right through until April next year. So when I said before about conflict, that's the escalation of conflict. The end of this year, that's just going to be a lot of tension that's going to drive to some sort of flashpoint or crisis, or even war in some areas or ways, escalating of that. So if there already is war going on, which there is in the Middle East, there is in the Russia-Ukraine situation, there's tension with China, even the US itself, there's a lot of talk around like the threat to impact of conflict that they have, not only civilly, but also for foreign. So I put a big asterisk around the end of this year and into next year, is like just to seeing how things go in that sense. On a personal level, this is a real time of like taking action to do big changes, so taking the action. So on your awareness journey or the awakening journey, you get an expansion of your perception and awareness. That's fantastic. But if you don't integrate that expanded awareness into action and change in your world, you get stuck between two worlds. So you have the awareness of, how things are, but you're living in the conditioned sort of reality you've created for yourself. And that between two worlds is hell. And the only way out of that state is radical action, changing and doing things differently, making different choices. So as we move to the end of this year, personally, for most people, it's going to be around integrating like some profound action in the sense of their own journey. We've got to make changes now, big changes. And if you're able to integrate those changes in your life, you'll see the outcome of this process is going to be a complete transformation, and most likely for the better.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing all of that. Do
Yeah.
you always feel like, I mean, it's a very Instagrammy thing, but there's always some type of eclipse or a retrograde or some significant planetary event that is going on that we need to be wary of and aware of. And it almost feels like you need to back away from it sometimes because it can get too overwhelming, being absorbed in the concern of what's coming and what's going to happen.
Yes. So there's a way to sort of understand this and how to integrate some of that and choose and filter it as well, right? And the only way really to do that is to understand your own map, your own birth chart. Imagine your map, right, is helping you understand your journey. When you look at all the things astrologically are going on, it's almost like you're not looking at your map anymore, you're looking at the entire universe, the whole big thing, and there's an eclipse or there's an alignment or there's these things happening, right? Well, imagine you're on a journey and your journey is taking you from Melbourne to the Gold Coast, and back when there was no horse cart or nothing, you were just walking. Then imagine over in, say, somewhere in the UK, they were going to have an earthquake. Now, you on your little journey from Melbourne to Queensland, just doing your thing and living your life and going on your path, how is that earthquake in UK going to impact you? It isn't. But what happens in social media is you get the information of, oh, there's going to be this alignment and this is happening. And because you haven't integrated that to your chart, so you don't even know if that's going to be personally affecting you, you're going, there's this thing happening, and then nothing happens because it's in the UK and you're here in Australia. So you've got to think about what's happening energetically, astrologically, is like they're always giving you the big collective picture. What I like to do, especially with my clients, is we'll look at their map and go, yeah, but does that impact you? Yeah, it's probably nothing going on. That's like, say, for example, like this, right? Boxing Day tsunami, massive event, like shock and awe. Everyone around the world was like, what? Personally, did it impact people? Well, the 250,000 people that lost their lives and those families associated to it. But let's say a billion people personally were affected some way or shape or another. Was 8 billion people on Earth. So therefore, we experienced it within our reality. We were aware of it, but personally, it didn't really impact us. So astrology is a lot like that. When you hear about these eclipses and alignments, unless you are associating that to your own map and going, oh, that eclipse actually hits my chart on my sun, then I know that that eclipse that everyone's the hype's talking about is going to be personal for me. Now I need to understand how to integrate that awareness into how to navigate this potential period of change. So yeah, it's okay to absorb some of that, but if it becomes overwhelming, or if you're living in this state of like anxiety or anxiousness of what might happen next, and there's going to be an eclipse, you've got to then really bring that back down to your own personal sort of experience and go, yeah, but is that going to impact me at all? And the only way to know that is to know your chart, your personal chart. It's a bit of a bugbear. I get it to a degree. It's the nature of, how we talk about these things, and it's got to be to the collective, I guess. But if you want a personal way to navigate, you've got to integrate it to you and your own experience. The only way to do that is to understand your chart. And one of my missions, and I'm working more towards that behind the scenes, is to create education for those people that want to learn about themselves through astrology, but don't want to be astrologers. Because a lot of the information when you think about astrology and how to learn about astrology is all geared towards becoming an astrologer. So it's complex, it's in depth, and it's like takes a long time. It took me probably, I did 4 years of study before I started professionally, but then I probably the first 2 years professionally, I was still learning. So that's like 6 years to really expose myself to this daily and learn and read and trial before I got confident enough where I can understand it on a deep level. So for a lot of people, that's not their path and their journey to invest that much of their time and energy into it. But just the basics and a basic understanding of learning about themselves on a deeper level using astrology language is really going to be beneficial. So my mission is to sort of create a platform and a space to show and help people and educate people that want that level of understanding. So that a very quick understanding of what I tell my students already is, if there's an eclipse, find out where it's happening in the zodiac and what degrees, and then you should already know in your chart where your significant placements are. So instantly, if you go, oh, there's a big eclipse coming, you can be like, yeah, but that's not impacting my chart in any way, shape, or form personally. So I know I don't really have to consider too much about that.
You always answer so clearly, and you've touched on everything that I was asking there. And in particular, I wanted to follow up and ask, what if people want to know their birth chart? And I know you do individual readings for people, and that's something that you do, but it's good to know that there's you are creating a platform that is that overview that people can access without going too deeply into the ins and outs of astrology.
You know what the best way to learn astrology is? Meditate on the symbols of astrology, and you keep it really simple. So at the moment, we've got the sun in Cancer, the sign Cancer, and the sun's going to spend 30 days in each sign over 1 year, which isn't that much time. The time's going to pass anyway. We have the sun going through every part of the zodiac. And the sun is light, right? It brings light, and light is awareness. So it's going to shine awareness into the archetype of Cancer. So what I tell people is, if you want to really learn astrology, meditate on the symbols of this, where the sun is. So Cancer, okay, Cancer is a water sign, so meditate on water and the idea of water. Now it's in a modality which is cardinal, which means it's expressive. So it's water in motion. So then you might meditate on a stream of water, or a waterfall, or a flow of water, and you meditate. When you meditate on symbols, you access some of the wisdom that underlies that symbol. So another example is the color green. Green is a symbol, right? So green can mean green of the heart. The heart chakra is green, but we can be green with envy. Green is associated to money because it's called the greenback. If we want to protect the environment, we say go green. Green is also the color of the traffic light that means go. So we're good with green. So you can see how green, just the color green, can mean so many different things. Well, water, in expression of motion, is associated to the sign of Cancer. Cancer has a symbol which looks like a 69 on its side, which is supposed to indicate female breasts, because the part of the body part that Cancer relates to is our breasts. So the life-giving sustenance of our breasts. So you might meditate on breasts and what the function of breasts are to give life, to sustain life. They're also a fact of beauty for women, right? We might also meditate on the crab because the symbol of Cancer is associated to the animal, the crab. So the crab is an animal that doesn't move forward or backwards, it moves side to side. Gives you an understanding of the nature of Cancerians is they never really go directly, they always go a roundabout way to get to what they want. But a water is associated to emotions, so they're really emotionally sensitive people. Crabs have hard shells and they have soft bodies. So Cancerians can put on a brave face, but they're deeply sensitive. And if threatened, what does a crab do? It runs and hides in its little hole, right? So Cancerians, when threatened or insecure, they tend to withdraw. So you could see by just meditating on the symbols that are associated to just one sign, all of a sudden you're starting to understand Cancer so much better. Then you take that and you say, where's Cancer in my birth chart? And it's real easy online. You can get a free birth chart. And you go, oh, Cancer's over here in my 5th house of play, children, and joy, creativity. So now I'm associating the expression of that energy to that area of my life. And if you do that, let's say you spent 5 to 10 minutes every day for 30 days on each sign, by the end of the year, you'd probably be way more knowledgeable than the vast majority of the social media astrologers that are out there, just because you've given yourself time to access the wisdom of the symbols that we do when we meditate. We're going through our right brain. So anything that's been embedded in a symbol forever through anyone ever that ever meditated on the symbol of Cancer or a crab or anything like that, you access that knowledge when you meditate on it. It's just it's channeled, it downloads. So when I read for my clients, I'm looking at their chart and we're talking to them and I'm talking, my body heats up because I'm channeling. I'm not remembering. I'm not trying to look at their chart and trying to remember what that means. I'm just channeling because what the symbol does, it activates my right brain, which gives me access to the library that's subconscious. So if you want to do that to improve your understanding of astrology, which is the language of the universe, the energetic language of the universe, which can help you understand this world and your own path in it, meditate on the symbols. It's
Mm.
simple. You just got to do it.
I love this. So are you still doing regular astrology readings for people one-on-one?
Yes, because I'm a sole trader, if I
Yes.
don't work, I don't get paid. So fortunately, even with my accident, there was some concussion, but there's been no impact on my faculties. My work is done online and with a computer, and I'm comfortable. So yeah, I've been able to continue seeing my clients. There was a 2-week period, obviously, in the peak of it, where I was just out of action. But yeah, I'm seeing clients. I actually got a client after this in New York. I also do past life regression therapy, and I also do energetic work, which is like a form of Reiki. And I can do that in person or remotely as well. And at the moment, all my work is remotely, obviously. Not seeing anyone in person.
We'll definitely put links to booking with you in the show notes. What sort of stage of life or what situation of life are people generally in when they come to you and need and want an astrology reading, do you think?
If everything's going well in your life and you're in a flow state and things are just happening and you're feeling really good and optimistic, and there's just like people really rarely see astrologers
Mm.
because that would be like you're on your journey and you know exactly where you are and you know exactly where you're going. So you don't need a map at that point because you're like, no, I'm good. I don't need to look at the map. So people that come to see me, they're off path and they know it. And generally, what that means is in their life, they've confronted some difficulty, challenge, or setback. And that difficulty, challenge, or setback could be health related, it could be love related, could be career, could be family problems going on. But it's like a roadblock, and they're just there, and then they're going, I'm stuck or I'm lost. So those are my clients, and I'm like, okay, let's zoom out here.
Yeah.
What are we not seeing? Where are some of these triggers? Where are some of the patterns? What's the karmic pattern? So karma, my understanding of karma isn't that you've been bad and now you're paying the price. As most people think karma is, oh, karma will get them. Karma is there is a pattern of behavior that you've built up over evolution that's most likely kept you safe and surviving. But that pattern of behavior, being somewhat unconscious or dysfunctional, is creating or co-creating an experience which that experience most likely is difficulty or challenging or negative, is reinforcing the same pattern of behavior. So that's what goes around comes around, so the law of equivalent exchange. So when I help people understand their karmic patterns, I connect them to their part of the behavior that's co-creating the experience. And then I bring it back to them and say, well, what are we going to do to change? So now you're aware, and this is how you've normally been responding, because that's what's kept you alive and safe. But now it's not keeping you alive. It's keeping you devolved. It's keeping you stuck. So we have to find different ways to change or to choose different ways and behave differently. And then that co-created reality all of a sudden changes. And the next thing, oh God, I can do something different. So most of my work is helping people overcome really difficult life situations that they've got themselves into.
Yeah.
Their conditioned self got themselves there because that's what they thought they were supposed to be or do. And now their awakened self is like going, and that happened to me in my own journey as well. So I have a lot of empathy for those people because I've been there. I've been there in a job I didn't want to do, in a business I created for myself, with debt and mortgages, with a relationship that I wasn't, happy with. And I had to go through the changes of all of those. And as I went through my awakening journey, I had my birth chart, and my understanding of astrology is a way to go. This is going to be hard, but I have to do it, sort of thing. Yeah.
So interesting. So interesting. Thank you so much for everything you've shared today. I find what you talk about absolutely fascinating. I want to ask you one last question, Luke. What is something that you once heard that you could not unhear, and that I suppose made you see the world differently in some way?
9/11 was an inside job.
Who told you?
A friend sent me a video.
Mm.
So the catalyst, I always say to people, 9/11 was my gateway drug to awakening. Like it literally was, because up until that point, when September 11 happened, 2001, I was like most people, early in the morning in Australia, I'd turn on the TV and I go, what? My initial reaction was, oh, America's not going to like this. They're going to do something about this, And that was in September. November that year, I moved and migrated to the UK for 3 years. I was 22, I think. And so I was in the UK when the second Gulf War and the Afghan War and all that started. And I remember watching it on the news, like, oh yeah. And Bush was on there talking about Saddam, and I was like this. I was like, yeah, go get him. We've got to do this. Like that's how conditioned I was back then. So fast forward to about 2012, 2013, and life was just going along. I think it was the start of a lot of social media interaction, and we started to like share information and stories, and YouTube was starting to really come into its own. And a friend of mine had sent me a video and said, oh, you should watch this video, it's on 9/11. And it was 9/11 was an inside job. And up until that point, I had zero reason to question anything about what had happened at that point. I believed the official narrative. And then I watched a video and I was like, hang on a second, what? Like, what? It wasn't that. Like, what? It was just fractured my awareness to the point where I was like, well, and then there was a link and there was another video and there was more information, and then there was just another and another and another. So yeah, 2013, 14, 15, I started consuming internet videos. I was pest controlling, and I used to have my phone in my pocket with a earpiece up here in my ear, one piece, because pest controlling, you go meet the client and then you do the job, but they normally go away because you're pest controlling. Or I'm doing a termite inspection, I'm crawling under houses or through roofs. So you're spending a lot of time on your own. But I was listening to YouTube videos in one ear. So I was doing my work, but listening to information, podcasts, videos, like just consuming them between jobs. Sometimes I'd have an hour drive between work and jobs. I'd be listening to more videos and listening and listening and listening. So that one 9/11 was an inside job. That one video, that one person that sent me that was the catalyst for so much rabbit hole diving that got me to astrotheology, astrology and religion, and tying those two things in and thinking, hang on, if religion is telling the story of the movement of the stars through their mythology and all religions are saying the same story, there must be something to the movement of the stars. So then I started to look into astrology and I was like, whoa, hang on. I thought astrology was horoscopes in the magazines. No, you've got a birth chart. So I got my birth chart and I read a very generic interpretation of it. And I was like, how is this accurate? What is going on? So that led me to go and seek out a professional astrologer. And I said, do the thing, do the thing. I want to know. And then she was like, yeah. And I was like, what? I said, I need to know how to do this. I don't need to know how, I want to learn this. Yeah. So then that set me on my path to become an astrologer.
Oh
So
my goodness.
it was
That
like 9/11 was an inside job. And like, my belief on it now is like, what happened and I don't know, but I know this. What they told us happened and the way it happened, no fucking way it did. There's no way. Not the case. Zero chance.
What a huge things you can't unhear moment. That has just absolutely changed the last, 14, 15 years of your life completely.
Some people think for the worst. I believe for the better.
Yeah, well, you've
People left
changed.
behind in my past are still going, who is this guy? If you had known me back when I was younger and even at school age and that, I've got clients that track me down. They're like, oh, I went to school with you. And I'm like, no way. I met a woman recently and she said, oh, you were such a prick at school. And I was like, yeah, I was. So sorry about that.
I'm nice now.
Yeah, but I was because I was insecure. I was small and I had to have a really hard persona to protect myself from vulnerability. So I became the cheeky clown class smartass. I was on the front foot always. So, but that was shielding my own fear, doubts, and insecurities that I'd lived with for a long time. So you go through the awakening journey. It's not just about exposing yourself to 9/11 videos and that. It's about doing the work. I've done and I continue to do a lot of work on myself to improve and evolve the person I am and who I'm becoming. So, I don't regret one thing that's happened in my past, and I don't begrudge the younger version of myself either. I just go there. That's who I was at that time, understandably.
Yeah, and you've made that conscious decision not to continue to be that prick.
I do
And
my best. He comes out every now and then.
yeah, more evolved version of the prick. Hey?
Yeah. Sometimes I can be like, say things and people are like, oh, so,
I love that. Thank you for everything shared here today. As mentioned, I'll pop links to Luke's Instagram, which is very active on. You've got YouTube channels and website that people can connect with you on as well. But I find everything that you do very, very fascinating. And I'm glad I met you at the David the Medium
likewise.
event. I think you're touring with him continuously, aren't you?
Yeah, we're going to Perth. So that's in August sometime. That's going to be exciting. I haven't been to Perth since 2004, I think was the last time I was in Perth. So that's
Awesome.
cool. So shout out to my Perth people, and and then who knows where after that. So and then I've got a
You
lot
should
of
come to our live event. We're doing a live podcast recording with David on the Sunshine Coast in August. So
yeah,
come on up and join us. Not
yeah,
too
yeah.
far from where you are.
We'll talk more.
We will talk. All right. Thank you so much, Luke, for your time here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.